Two American aircraft carriers were cutting through waters where enemies had already promised to sink them. Not threatened, not warned, promised. And the clock they set, they called it soon. Yemen released a video showing a ship burning in the Red Sea. One word appeared beneath those flames, not a slogan, not political posturing, not a carefully crafted diplomatic language that governments use when they want to sound tough without actually clinging to anything. Just one word, glowing on the screen like a countdown nobody knows how to stop. Soon. And the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford are sailing directly toward the waters where that promise was made. So before you dismiss this as another round of Middle Eastern political theater, you need to understand something that most news coverage is completely failing to explain. The Houthis aren't making this threat from a position of weakness. They're making it from a position of battle-hardened, combat-proven real-world experience that virtually no other military force on the planet currently possesses. They've attacked over 100 ships in the Red Sea. Not simulated, not practiced. Actually attacked. They've sunk two vessels, killed 40 hares, 70% of global cargo shipments to reroute entirely around Africa, adding billions of dollars in delays to the world economy. These are people who have spent years perfecting anti-ship warfare through constant real combat operations. Training exercises, not war game scenarios, actual combat, actual ships, actual destruction. And now they're pointing that perfected, battle-tested capability directly at American warships. Stay with me, because everything I'm about to lay out has been independently verified by military, the Times of Israel, PBS News, and virtually every major outlet covering this region. This isn't speculation. This is documented, confirmed, and accelerating by the hour. But here's the part that should genuinely make your stomach drop, because Yemen's threat is only half the story. While the Houthis are preparing to resume attacks on American naval vessels, something equally alarming is happening on land, roughly 1,000 miles away in Iraq. Kataib Hezbollah, an Iraqi militia group formerly designated as a foreign terrorist organization by the United States government, has just issued a statement calling fighters worldwide to prepare for what they described as a comprehensive war in direct support of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, I want you to hear the exact language their leader, Abu Hussein al-Hamidawi, used, because this wasn't diplomatic. There were no carefully chosen words designed to leave room for interpretation. He looked directly into the camera and told Americans, "Oregon Saran will not be a walk in the park. You will taste the bitterest forms of death, and nothing will remain of you in our region." Al Jazeera confirmed the statement. Iran International verified the quotes. PBS News documented the ongoing mobilization. FDD's Long War Journal reported that Qatari Hezbollah is actively threatening U.S. military bases across the Middle East right now today, as you're watching this. But here's the detail that Radio Free Europe uncovered. Detail that is genuinely terrifying Pentagon planners behind closed doors. Iraq isn't just recruiting regular fighters. They're not calling up conventional folders. They're specifically,
deliberately and openly recruiting suicide bombers. People are being recruited.
Trained not for defense or frontline combat, for martyrdom operations. And you need to understand what that means operationally, because this isn't symbolic. You don't recruit suicide bombers for defensive postures. You recruit them when you've already identified specific targets, require human sacrifice to destroy them. Driving explosive-laden boats directly into the hull of an aircraft carrier, wearing vests while approaching military checkpoints, flying drones manually into carrier flight decks at close range. That's not better at being thrown around for domestic political consumption. That is active operational preparation happening right now, and every detail of it is independently verifiable by anyone willing to look. And the tide has didn't stop at vague warnings. They issued specific threats, didn't specific weapons, identifying specific targets. Long War Journal documented a rally held outside the Iranian embassy in Baghdad, where a Hezbollah official stood before a crowd and cleared, "Hands are on weapons, ready to strike Americans latens the moment fighting begins. Here's what makes that statement particularly chilling. That rally happened before the current carrier deployments even reached full operational strength, before this week's crisis escalated to the levels we're seeing now, before most Americans even knew that war was being discussed as a serious, imminent possibility. Think about what that means. These Iraqi militias weren't reacting to American military movements. They weren't scrambling to respond after seeing carriers deployed. They were already mobilized, already prepared. They saw what was coming before the deployments even happened, and they started getting ready first. That's not a reactive force. That's a force that's been waiting, watching, and preparing for this exact moment. Now let's zoom out, because what makes the situation genuinely catastrophic, not just serious, not just concerning, but potentially catastrophic, is the convergence happening across 3 separate countries at the same moment. Iran threatens ships. Iraq is recruiting suicide bombers. Hezbollah in Lebanon is mobilizing tens of thousands of fighters, all happening simultaneously, all targeting American forces, all coordinated through Iranian backing and support. Qummus News reported that Hezbollah leader Sheikh Naim Qassem recently addressed thousands of supporters, telling them his group is preparing for possible aggression and is determined to defend against it. I want you to catch the framing there. Defending against aggression. That is Hasbara deliberately constructing a legal and political narrative that frames any American military presence in the region as aggression, which then justifies their own strikes as legitimate defense. They're not just preparing militarily. They're building the ideological and political architecture could justify attacks they've already planned. And it doesn't stop there. Iraq Spotter Organization, a powerful political party with an enormous Shia support across the country, has formally declared readiness to confront what they call American-Israeli arrogance if Iran is attacked. The Harakat al-Najaba movement joined them, going even further, threatening that the entire Persian Gulf region and Iraq will be drawn into the fighting the moment conflict begins. Global Security documented these declarations. Press TV confirmed the mobilization. Multiple separate Iraqi factions have with the are formally committed to war against American forces. This isn't one isolated extremist group issuing empty threats. This is a coordinated regional multi-country mobilization with 4 distinct military actors: Yemen, Iraq, Hezbollah, and Iran, all preparing attacks against the same target simultaneously. And American aircraft carriers are sailing directly into the center of the zone where all 4 of those threats converge. The Hill has published a stark warning that Trump is totally miscalculating the danger facing U.S. forces right now. Since experts are projecting a minimum baseline of 400 American casualties, and that's the minimum estimate under relatively contained scenarios. If fighting spreads across multiple fronts simultaneously, which is exactly what these mobilizations are designed to achieve, the casualty numbers climb into the thousands. Because, understand this clearly, this isn't one war. This is 4 separate wars designed to erupt simultaneously across different countries using completely packs, all targeting the same enemy. Yemen deploys anti-ship missiles and explosive boats against naval vessels. Iraq launches suicide bombers in drone forms against military bases. Hezbollah fires rockets and mortars across borders. Iran coordinates everything from behind the scenes, while maintaining the kind of plausible deniability that makes direct retaliation legally and politically complicated. You cannot defend against all of that at the same time. You simply cannot protect everything, everywhere, simultaneously, against enemies who control exactly when and where each engagement begins. Now let's talk about the numbers, because the math here is genuinely sobering. Popular mobilization forces in Iraq officially comprise over 140,000 fighters. They've been formally integrated into the Iraqi military structure since 2016. They receive regular government salaries. They have access to state military equipment and weapons. This is not a ragtag insurgent group operating out of abandoned buildings. This is a fully mechanized military organization comparable in size and capability to the recognized national armies of many sovereign countries. And they have publicly declared that they will go to war against American forces. Strikes occur against Iran. Hezbollah, even after sustaining significant losses in recent conflicts with Israel, still fields somewhere between 20,000 and 30,000 experienced fighters according to current intelligence estimates. That's a substantial military force fully capable of launching thousands of rockets daily into northern Israel, while simultaneously threatening American assets throughout the region. The house is maintained 4 different population centers, housing millions of people across northern Yemen. They have access to advanced Iranian-supplied missiles, sophisticated drone technology, and naval mines. And they have repeatedly demonstrated, not theoretically, but actually demonstrated, the capability to strike targets throughout the Red Sea and deep into Saudi Arabian territory. Bound across all these things through a little over 200,000 foreign fighters. They control territories spanning multiple sovereign nations. They operate with a level of coordination that suggests a unified command structure exists above them all. And the American forces currently positioned throughout the region? Approximately 40,000 personnel total, but across dozens of separate military installations, responsible for protecting commercial shipping lanes while simultaneously defending against coordinated attacks across a 1,000-mile front. The math simply doesn't work. No military strategists alive would look at those numbers and tell you America is in a comfortable defensive position. Here's what the CIS mobilization looks like equally
Partially different from every
previous Middle Eastern conflict we've seen in recent decades. During the most recent period when America conducted strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities, every single one of Iran's regional allies deliberately held back. They sat it out. They watched. They waited. This time, every single one of them is publicly promising the complete opposite response. Radio Free Europe interviewed regional experts who explained the underlying calculation driving this shift. Iran now views any potential U.S. military conflict as an existential threat, not a limited engagement, not a containing strike that can be absorbed and recovered from, but a genuine threat to the survival of the regime itself. And that changes everything. When a government believes its survival is at stake, it stops calculating costs and benefits. It stops worrying about proportionality. It activates every resource, every relationship, every proxy force that has spent decades carefully building and maintaining. Iran is falling in every favor accumulated over 30 years of strategic investment across the region, and the coordination timeline reveals that this isn't spontaneous. Yemen didn't suddenly decide to threaten American ships last week. Iraq didn't spontaneously begin recruiting suicide bombers as a reaction to carrier deployments. Hezbollah didn't randomly start mobilizing fighters. All 3 of these actions occurred within days of each other. All 3 groups used remarkably similar language about defending Iran. All 3 explicitly called for Nitzlit or nearly identical messaging frames. That is not a coincidence. That is a carefully orchestrated, 3-planned, regionally coordinated campaign that has been in preparation for months. Wikipedia has documented the build-up timeline, showing systematic escalation of Iraqi groups threatening U.S. bases, then calls going out for comprehensive war, then the houses releasing their soon-to-be video, then additional Iraqi factors declaring combat readiness. Each statement building on the previous one, each is expanding the scope of threatened attacks, which brings the entire region measurably, irreversibly closer to a war that nobody will be able to control once it actually starts. There's a strategic logic driving all of this mobilization that Pentagon planners understand deeply and find deeply alarming. Every single one of Iran's regional allies has reached the same conclusion independently. If Iran falls, they fall next. If you like this video, please subscribe to Gem242.